batteries. Here in Seattle, Pacific Northwest. Good morning, everyone. For me, it's the morning time. It's 10:14. I jumped on a little late, so I apologize if any of y'all were waiting. I have this giant water bottle here. Well, today I wanted to talk about some of the mindsets and some of the personas that we embody um, that may or may not be working with us and for us. First of all, my name is Angela Tam. I am a coach for other mental health therapists, specifically East Asian mental health therapists and therapy seekers. I'm here to crush and smash burdens that come along with our cultural trauma that we might be carrying so that we could live a free and unburdened life and live authentically. A lot of our blockages with our authenticity come from protective survival strategies that we've had to learn throughout the years to create that armor effect on us internally so that we could stay invisible. And that was a great survival strategy for our ancestors, but it might not work with us as our businesses are evolving and transforming. So I wanted to talk to you today about, for me, why I created this group, this business that I have, this group with our mental health collective in working with Asian American therapists, um, Asian therapists of the global diaspora, of the Asian diaspora, living globally. Really, any Asian therapist out there, and therapist seekers that seek to disenroll from the cultural mindsets that we've inherited. And for me, I felt like it was so hard as an entrepreneur and a therapist, and now a coach, to have a container where, I think my entrepreneurial parts were embraced and received, as well as my healer parts, as well as my cultural understandings, cultural structures, and frameworks that make up who I am. I am um, of Chinese descent, born to Chinese Vietnamese refugees, grew up in New York City. So I have a very multicultural, bicultural experience of what it's like to not identify with one culture over another and living and straddling multiple worlds, not feeling like I'm ever enough of something. And that is a very unique struggle of us, folks who have been, um, ripped from their motherlands and plopped into these countries through immigration trauma, through war, through poverty, through genocide of our ancestors. And now we're really making our home in a new land. I'm in unceded Duwamish territory, also known as Seattle, and just really making sense of what it's like to be a settler here, to be a visitor here, to be on borrowed land here, and to be a therapist, a healer slash practitioner slash parent slash entrepreneur. And for me, I thought it was really important to have um, a container where multiple parts of us, parts of me, were honored. I think, as in my experience going to see a therapist, my entrepreneurial parts, my therapist might not really in the past might have not really understood my entrepreneurial spirit and my desire to really grow my professional parts of myself in this in specific way. it seemed like I noticed that for me as a therapist slash entrepreneur, which is a very like specific type of person, it's not really embraced in the therapy world because I'll explain later about that. And like as even like a person who is very um straddling multiple identities with being queer, with being Chinese American. Also, like, there aren't even a lot of spaces in the healing world where my queerness and my Asianness are really understood and embraced. So for me, I felt like there's a lot of unique struggles in this intersection of being a therapist, a healer, and being an entrepreneur and being Asian, of the Asian diaspora. And I really feel like having this container for me as well as for other folks to bring their unique struggles and money wounds come up because we're doing entrepreneur work, we're doing marketing work, we're putting ourselves out there with our unique perspectives, having to show up in really countercultural ways as healers and as Asian folks. It is very important that no, we have a space to be supported. And I've always dreamed of having a space where my multiple identities could be supported. And I hope this space really helps you too. Um, and so in our group, something that I've noticed for me personally, what pitfalls or setbacks that I experienced were um, really a lot of internal voices, internal criticism, like an internal pushback of um, against my desire to be more outspoken and to have my own unique perspective put out there on social media. Like, I really didn't have any people out there that were hating on me, that were like bullying me. But what I noticed was my internal voices were hating on me, and my internal bullies were pretty big. And so for me, it was really important the challenge that I had to overcome was to disenroll from this mindset of like, I need to play it small. I need to be a people pleaser. I need to fit into a box. The box that I need to fit into are multiple boxes for folks with multiple identities. It's like my Asian parts are like, I need to be a submissive, good Asian daughter or good Asian follower. And my elders are the leaders. They are all wise and they have all the answers. I just need to like defer to authority. That's like one of my Asian boxes that I'm thinking of right now off the top of my head. And my therapy box is like, well, my clients are the experts, which they are. You're the expert in your own life as a client, but like there's a lot of like deferring to others, really not valuing, not seeing ourselves as unique and full and whole. And my therapist box that I had to disenroll from was like, I couldn't be human in my therapy box. I couldn't have a unique perspective. I needed to follow other people's perspective. I need to follow the industry's perspective on how to be a neutral force, how to be like almost a robot, like and like a foot soldier for the institution of Western healing, and like blending in with the crowd, of being super sweet and empathetic, which is not something I'm not, but also like kind of dampening down my other parts in order to fit into this box. And so for me, I had to disenroll from those boxes. I had to like kind of go through a grieving process that I would not fit into those boxes any longer. I had to choose to not fit into the boxes that other people wanted me and expected me to fit into. And that was such a freeing experience of like being going inside and not going outside and getting more training or getting more answers from out there, but looking inside to do the work of being aware of my inner landscape, of like looking inward, being self-reflective, self-aware, and going inside and really seeing and digging deep to see like what's going on inside, and to not reach for another like course, not reach for like another like thing to learn, but to like first look inside to like find out what's going on so that I could like orient to what's happening for reals inside. I think traditionally, like for me, I would be like in a chaotic scramble if I felt like overwhelmed inside, and just noticing for me how I um, really stopped to pause and to slow down and to like and to be curious about my inner landscape. As therapists, I think it's really interesting how we are really good at being aware of other people, but when it comes to like self-awareness, at least for myself, it was something that I really had to like make space for and be intentional about. And so for me, that is a big, big obstacle and something I want to encourage y'all with about looking inside, going inside first, just pausing and going inside, not looking outside, not doing research, not doing like all the other like things to scramble when we're in chaos, but to just look inside, to grow in our awareness of our inner landscape. And when I did that, I found out that there are some major players inside that are um, taking up a lot of space and making a lot of decisions in my life. The first major persona that is making a lot of appearances in my life is my inner therapist, my inner healer, my inner practitioner. That's the same person. So my inner therapist is a follower, receives clients through directories or referrals or SEO stuff through my website. I'm like really used to like receiving people and being welcoming, being warm, being a hostess, and being really empathetic and really like identifying with other people's feelings. And the therapist part of me is actually drawn to energetic vampires. I don't know if y'all resonate with that, but I'm like, my if I'm in my therapist self and I see someone who's like wanting to take of me, I'm like very drawn to that in a very dysfunctional way. And so I just noticed that in my therapist self, like, and my therapist self is very self-sacrificing. It's very into like the martyrdom trap. It's like very into like getting the gold stars by being seen as a self-sacrificing person, and has internalized cultural norms from two cultures: the culture of like whitewashed therapy and the culture of like how East Asian, for me, like Chinese American cultural burdens show up in my family. So I have like multiple things going on with my therapist part that's like internalize these cultural norms of being a people pleaser, getting things done, being like reactive, being like very like reactively empathetic. Like my therapist self only has one reaction. It's like empathy. There's not much there's not much else out there in terms of like anger or any other feelings that show up. Really, it's just really like empathy. And it enjoys scripts. I don't know how y'all resonate with that, but like I'm like I like myself a good script. I like to know exactly how to react to people when they're throwing me curveballs. And this is another thing, like therapists, when I'm in my therapist self, I do enjoy blending in with a crowd and not ruffling any feathers. So when I'm doing my Psychology Today profile, I'm like, okay, how do I blend in with everyone else? Like, how do I look like someone who is like so compassionate, so warm, so understanding? And also when I'm in my therapist self, I see, I like notice when other people have like critical lens towards whatever issue is at hand. And my therapist persona sees that as divisive and not valuable. So as a result, my therapist persona, if I'm in it, polices other people, judges other people for being divisive. It moves towards assimilation, values assimilation. It does not value protecting my energy or time. It doesn't see my time and energy as valuable, so it doesn't have boundaries to protect it. And it unconsciously, my therapist persona unconsciously sees themselves as a blank slate, and it doesn't believe in projection because like there's this invincibility shield of like, well, I'm a blank slate, so I won't project. The positive parts about this therapist part is it knows how to hold space for people empathetically. It knows how to be a good listener. It is sweet. It is super compassionate, and it knows how to receive folks who are hurting. It has like a really well-versed way of being with people who are like extremely hurt, and it problem solves very well. It's also like a good caseworker. It gets things done. It connects resources to people. It sees the problem and it knows, like, bam, 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 exactly what we're supposed to do. And some of the mindsets behind this persona is if I just keep learning more about my clients' problems, I'll be able to help them effectively. I don't need to address my own emotional well being. My focus should only be on my clients. I need to work on business strategies like building my referral network, having a website, directories, not doing more inner work. I already do inner work as a therapist. My reading, my personal development is my inner work. My journaling is my inner work. Professional competence should be prioritized over personal growth. Like they don't this part of me doesn't see personal growth equated with professional competence. And so this part, I'm just trying to flesh out my part here with being my therapist part because I think it's important for us to recognize that we have these parts and these some of these mindsets do serve us, but really some of them don't. So I really want to bring awareness to this as we look inside our inner landscape so that we can start to move towards what it would mean to be in self leadership, to be moving towards like healing, to be moving towards unburdening of these parts. The student part is the number two part that I'd like to focus on today. Of like our inner landscape. The student part is a follower. It receives assignments, try to get all the A's. It compares themselves to other students. It knows that there's a formula out there and like just plugging in and playing is important. Like plug and play, plug and play. It's like formula, you plug it in and then you play it, you execute it. And the student is really like focused on asking the question like how? How does this work? How um how do I do this? How do I do that? It focuses on like student persona focuses on taking notes, memorizing it, regurgitating it, and reciting it. And it's obsessed with finding the right answer, even though there's no right answer. But this part's like obsessed with finding the right answer. It also defers to authorities in the form of teachers and elders, and like specifically like white males. This student part of me sees white males as like the authority figure and like the source of wisdom. It does not see like my body, my intuition as possessing like inherent wisdom. It sees like wisdom as outside of me. And like it likes to study and research and get credentialed. And it's like so proud when other people respect them. And it values book smarts and again, not inner wisdom. It does not follow seasonality. It just says like, let's do the research all year round. It doesn't think about rest. It doesn't think about play. It just focuses on like high achieving good grades. So the mindset here, that like messages here is like Insight work alone is sufficient for personal and professional development. Investing in inner healing is unnecessary. I can figure it out on my own by reading books. Reading about my problems will eventually solve them. That's what my student part says. Now, I want to introduce to you a figure called our inner entrepreneur or CEO. This part is like highly atrophied, so I want to like really like just paint a picture of it. This part of us is a leader, is proactive. The other two parts, the student part and the therapist part, are followers. So they're really good at following. The CEO is a really good leader. It's proactive. It goes out and makes connections proactively. It doesn't rely on like directories or referrals because they might not come. CEOs, SEOs embedded into the website might not successfully help people come in. So it goes out and makes connections, has a unique perspective, and that unique they have to look inward. CEOs look inward to be self-focused to find their unique perspective, and they see themselves as a public figure, like not a private figure, but a public figure, not someone that's like hiding behind directories, but someone who has like an opinion that's putting themselves out there, maybe a controversial opinion. It's not afraid to seek guidance when needed for personal and professional issues and sees the professional and personal intersecting and mutually impacting one another. It sees the importance of business strategies along with personal growth and inner healing. It's a visionary. This part of me, the CEO part of me, is not afraid of making money. It has a healthy sense of entitlement with receiving money, and it makes powerful and risky decisions sometimes. It's forced to be creative when it's always just like for fun, and it makes its own rules. Like we make our own rules. Our CEOs make our own rules. It doesn't like to like follow other people's rules, but it sees their like creativity as part of making their own rules. It likes to move towards what is wrong or controversial sometimes because it sees like some things that are controversial, and if they like really, align with what's controversial, can repel the people that they shouldn't be working with and bring in the people that they should be working with. And this CEO part of us has a critical lens. It doesn't see like things in a judgmental light. It sees things in a critical light in a way that like questions the status quo. Doesn't see questioning the status quo as divisive, and is motivated towards awareness of the internal blocks that prevent us from being public figures, prevent us from having unique perspectives, prevent us from putting ourselves out there. And it decouples worth from your salary. It doesn't see like our worth as being equated to how much like other people value us. And so it's able to charge more, um, because it doesn't see there's nothing that's linked to a person's like worth with how much money they're receiving. And finally, the CEO examines threats that it's experienced and its harms that it's experienced and sees them as learning opportunities and opportunities to not project it onto others. So for me, just to sum this all up, number one, finding an intersectional container of being an Asian therapist with my Asian cultural trauma and being an entrepreneur, the intersections of that is why I created this container. And the first thing that was really important for me was to look inward. And I invite you to look inward so that we can create maybe a landscape where it's then we can learn skills to help with building the entrepreneurial CEO parts of us. But first, looking inward is important so that our inner landscape is primed to receive those skills. And then the third step is so the first step is looking inward. The second step is like, and so that we could be primed to learn skills. and develop skills. So there is a skills component in my container. And the third is to create space for these parts to show up in a more balanced way through self leadership. And so, like all the cultural trauma that's associated with these parts of us that have been exposed to Asian cultural trauma, American cultural trauma, therapy cultural trauma is metabolized so that these parts can kind of like be free to show up in the way they need to. So, like with the CEO, with like showing authentically in your marketing has to do with disenrolling from the mindset of the institutional mindset and then unburdening ourselves from the cultural trauma of the therapy world. So, hi, Issa. Good to see you. I'm actually gonna hop off, but I will keep this in the recordings in the replay, and you're welcome to check it out. If you have any questions, let me know and drop me some stuff in the some a message or questions in the DM. Hey, I just spoke about like looking internally, making space for inner reflection first. And no worries, yes, feel free to catch the replay. Looking inward, going inward first, um, tuning inside to see what's going on in the chaotic inner landscape, and then skill building in order to recognize how cultural trauma has affected our system. And then the third is like unburdening ourselves from the cultural burden of being having multiple intersectional identities. Please catch it in the replay, and I'll see you soon. Bye, Issa.